A loving mom, kidnapped and murdered.
Pause. What if toxic energy surfaced so that we could see it, feel it, confront it?
In her final moments, she may have saved her children's lives from her attacker, a killer who was once hailed as a hero.
Child did identify the suspect as Troy Savitz, and she says that he's a Pinellas deputy.
The item deputies say was at the center of a kidnapping nightmare that turned deadly.
We're proud of Deputy Savitz. Thank you for being an exemplary public servant. That sentence stayed pinned to a sheriff's office Facebook page for years. It sat beneath photographs of a man in uniform throwing a first pitch at a Tampa Bay Rays game. It sat beneath a commendation for saving a man from jumping off a bridge. And on Monday night, that same man stood in a front yard in Hudson, Florida, waiting for a mother and her 2 daughters to come home from the beach.
This is a video we found of Mandy on her social media. She loved to share life advice and videos like that. Mandy lived in Pasco County, Florida, gorgeous part of the state on the Gulf Coast. And this is her picture with her daughters. She loved her kids. She was a mom whose entire life seemed to revolve around her daughters. Here she is with one of her daughters getting ready, it seems, for like a dance competition. Then in another video, they're having a great time in the backyard. Those girls are now 9 and 12 years old. And what they witnessed on Monday night is hard to put into words. What they had to do as their mom's life was in danger is something that no child should ever have to do. Before I get to that,
imagine a framed medal hanging on a wall. Now turn it over. The back is rusted through. That is the entire story of Troy Savitz in one image. 14 years with the Pasco County Sheriff's Office, honored for talking a stranger off a ledge, and on the night in question, accused of taking a phone out of Mandy Facer's hand so she could not call 911.
We're proud of Deputy Savitz. Thank you for being an exemplary public servant. And yet, more than a decade later, that deputy, who was hailed a hero for protecting his community, became a killer who people in his line of work try to stop. Deputies say on Monday night around 5:30, Mandy and her 2 daughters were coming back to their home after a day at the beach. And when they got home, Deputy Troy Savitz was there waiting for them.
They see the victim's ex-boyfriend, who's identified as Troy Savitz. He was standing in their yard in Hudson. Troy Savitz and the victim start arguing. Supposedly Troy wants his TV back. There was some dispute over some of his materials. The victim then turns to her children. She first tries to call 911. At some point, Troy takes the phone out of her hand, so she is unable to call 911. The victim then tells her children to go inside to call 911, which they do.
That's the Pasco County
Before we
Sheriff.
go deeper into what the records actually show, subscribe to Trial Theory Unsealed, because we don't just cover the story. We follow the evidence. The sheriff called the relationship tumultuous. That is the bureaucratic word for it. On again, off again. Volatile. And on that Monday, the spark was not a classified document or a national security breach. It was a television set, a dispute over property. That is what the sheriff told reporters. An argument over a TV.
We're not sure when and at what point this suspect had killed the victim.
Now, here is what Savitz's boss, the Pinellas County Sheriff, had to say at that news conference about what was at the center, potentially, of this deadly confrontation.
Yeah, and the argument is, this is so stupid. And from what we know from our people, they've had this on again, off again, tumultuous relationship. But he's there because he wanted his TV set back. This is an argument over a TV set. Obviously, it's deeper than that. But for that to spark him to decide that he is going to take his gun, kidnap her, shoot her and kill her, and have her kids experience that over whatever relationship issues, and the spark was a TV set, it's just horrible.
But here is where the official narrative cracks. Mandy did not argue. She did not escalate. She turned to her daughters and told them to go inside and call 911. That command was the last protective act of her life. Her children, 9 and 12 years old, called dispatch. They identified the suspect by name. They identified him as a Pasco deputy. They stayed calm while their mother was forced into a rental car.
The child calls 911, working with dispatch, and I will say when you listen to that call, and I'll get a little bit further in that call, talk about it, but the dispatcher and the child did a phenomenal job. The child was absolutely extremely brave in what she did and what she said and the information she gave. During that time, the child did identify the suspect as Troy Savitz, and she says that he's a Pinellas deputy. The deputies, Pasco deputies, arrive on scene. We clear the house. We're not sure where the victim is at this point or the suspect, but we clear the house and we secure the 2 children.
The sheriff says that Savitz kidnapped Mandy and put her in a rental car.
That detail sits in the file like a splinter. A deputy with access to a marked cruiser did not arrive in his unit. He did not arrive in his own vehicle. He arrived in a rental. The sheriff's office did not explain why. And that is the question the official record refuses to answer. Was this a spontaneous dispute over a television? Or was it premeditated enough to require a car no one would recognize?
In front of, 2 girls, and at any point in time, he could have turned around, he could have stopped it. It's interesting they pointed out that he was in a rental car, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if he was on hard times, or a car was in the shop, or if there was something more to it, that this wasn't a, hey, I'm here to get my television. Oh, all these angry feelings have come back, and then it escalates. I'm in a situation I can't get out of, and then sadly it ends up this way, or if it was something more. What did you make of that part of the story? The fact that they would just point that out, is there anything to read into there?
I think potentially there is. Everything, as far as I'm concerned, has a message and a meaning. Now, again, will we ever know? I think it is possible that he shows up in the rental car, perhaps because then it wouldn't be something, let's say, glaring to neighbors or to our victim and or the daughters. So again, the part that we don't know, and maybe it's to be forthcoming as the investigation continues, but did he really intend for this to happen? He would have known. The sheriff even said what a glorious day was had by the little girls and the mom, and they spent the day at the beach and such a wonderful time together to go from, the dream, if you will, to now the nightmare. So I think potentially the rent-a-car may have almost been part of a disguise, certainly not showing up in the deputy cruiser, nor necessarily showing up in his own vehicle.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we'll see, what other pieces of information come out on this, from his personnel file. Were there any red flags as far as his mental health and the way that he was acting? Certainly very different from the person in, I think it was 2014, 2015. He ends up in, and irony is such a hard word to use in this story, but it is one where he once stopped someone from taking their own life off of a bridge. And then here we are a decade later, and that hero is so far in the past with what
the timeline is brutal in its simplicity. 5:30 in the evening, Mandy and her daughters return from the beach. Savitz is in the yard. He wants his TV back. He takes her phone. The girls go inside. They call 911. Deputies arrive. They clear the house. They secure the children. And they find nothing else, because Mandy is already gone.
Around 7 o'clock that night, this is what they found.
A ping comes back to an area, Platinum Drive, where one of our deputies sees the vehicle. They see the vehicle, and at that point, we fly a drone. We're able to identify there was 2 bodies in the car. Our teams approach safely because we're not sure. We know the suspect's armed, but we're not sure exactly if he's still alive or not. But then we identify that he and the victim are deceased. This is around 7 o'clock at night. Information comes out later that there was a person that had seen him, the suspect, driving down the street. They actually gave each other a thumbs up at some point. And then it's shortly after that where the suspect took his own life. We're not sure when and at what point this suspect had killed the victim.
90 minutes later, a ping leads deputies to Platinum Drive. A drone goes up. The camera finds 2 bodies inside a car. Mandy Facer, Troy Savitz, both deceased. The suspect had taken his own life. At what point he killed her? Before or after the suicide? The official record does not say. Here is the moral refrain you need to hold onto: the uniform does not protect the victim. The uniform does not protect the victim.
Law enforcement says that Mandy's 2 daughters are now with their biological dad. It doesn't appear that Savitz was trying to harm the children, according to law enforcement, but there's no doubt he put them in harm's way. A powerful moment in this news conference was this message that the Pasco County Sheriff had for those two girls who will now grow up without their mom, a mom who loved them so much.
There's going to be a point in your life where you're going to go back and listen to all the videos and read all the reports and everything that happened. So please hear this directly from us. We listened to that 911 tape, and we know that your mother said to go inside to save your lives and to call 911. You did exactly what your mom asked you to do. So know this, your mom is looking down from heaven, and she's so proud of you too, because she did exactly what any parent would have wanted her children to do, and that's to save their own lives and be safe. So know that. You two did the right thing. You did exactly what your mom wanted you to do. And she's so proud of you for what you did. When I heard that video and the sheriff heard that audio, we were all amazed at how brave you both were. We were amazed that, the calmness that you were under and the information you were able to provide us so we can get there as quick as possible. So we're so proud of you, and I know your mom is. But know that this entire community is praying for you. Our arms go around you, and we're going to do everything we can because, we know you're going to be going back to school, and we're going to make sure that the resources are there for you.
Now here is where the thriller element tightens. We have a man trained to de-escalate, a man honored for crisis intervention, and on the day he decided to end a woman's life, he did not use that training. He used a gun. He used a rental car. He used surprise. So the ticking clock question becomes this: if a decorated deputy can become a killer in the span of one argument, how many other volatile relationships are one dispute away from the same ending? And how would anyone on the outside
Joining
ever
us now
see
to
it
unpack
coming?
this case is Dr. Debbie Goodman, a criminologist. Dr. Debbie, always great to have you here on Law and Crime. I feel like recently we have seen so many of these cases. People will remember the family in Michigan. I think it was last week or the week prior. Husband killing his 6 kids and his wife and then himself. In this case, you have this deputy who, was in, according to law enforcement, a tumultuous relationship with Mandy. But, at the end of the day, he truly acts like, I just keep thinking, like, how can a police officer do something like this? Especially someone of 14 years. I mean, truly a monster to do this in front of children. Take us into the mind of people in these cases. They may not have a criminal record. In his case, Deputy Savitz, was, according to law enforcement, this exemplary member of law enforcement. And then suddenly he's doing this. I don't know what was going on in his life, but, take us into the mind of people who in these moments do these things.
Certainly. Well, pleasure to join you, Chris. And what a horrendous, horrible case we have here. And may I please express my condolences to the families, because on both sides of the coin, they're decedents. And when we talk about mental health, we understand how far-reaching it is. But you're absolutely right. When we take a look at the configuration here of Deputy Savitz and somebody whose life is really, prompted on the public service. That's what local, state, and federal officers do. They help others, especially in times of trauma. And yet, look at the irony of the trauma that he himself must have been going through to make this horrendous, fatal decision. So I know when we are talking about killers, we do think about individuals such as a Koberger or a Huerman and just the devastation and despair. But yet, Chris, we need to understand and recognize that even among neighbors, even those who are professionals, we simply just don't know what burdens are they carrying, how fragile is their mental health. And, I have a theory that I've created as a criminologist, jar theory, and I wonder if that's potentially, relevant to this case. Jealousy, anger, revenge. Certainly there's some level of anger, obviously deeply rooted. He took the revenge against his victim, but was there a jealousy component? More to come, of course, but absolutely horrendous. The victimology also, by the way, so far reaching, because it's not just the victims as defendant, as they've lost their lives, and how sad for the little boys who are now to grow up, and the children, and then other local, state, and federal officers, communities. So there's really a lot to unpack here.
The
It really
sheriff's
is.
office said the children were brave. They said the dispatcher did a phenomenal job. They said the mother did exactly what any parent would want her children to do. All true. But it is also a deflection, because the institution that honored Troy Savitz for heroism did not flag him for instability. The same institution that once posted his photograph with the word proud did not see the domestic violence coming. Or if they did not act. Here is the hard evidence gap. The Pasco County Sheriff's Office has not released Savitz's full personnel file. No internal affairs records, no prior complaints, no wellness checks, no red flags. And yet the sheriff stood before cameras and described the relationship as tumultuous. Tumultuous is not a word you discover after a murder. Tumultuous is a word
Well,
you
there's
knew
really a
before.
lot to unpack here.
There really is. And I think of the moment where all of this transpired Monday night, and police say that Mandy's coming back with her daughters to their house. They're at the beach, and there's Troy. And this relationship was over. Apparently, they might have been living together to some extent. He wanted his television back. And I know this is about more than just the TV. But, in these moments that then escalate to something as horrific as what we're talking about, like it wasn't just the TV, but the TV had something to do with it. Like these moments, like what do you see as kind of the deeper meaning of all of it?
Well, I think the deeper meaning is that the mental health in some individuals is so deeply rooted. And I think the TV was really just the tipping point. But thank goodness, as a mom and as a protector, she knew to protect her daughters and make sure that they went into the home for safety, survival, and ultimately security of their lives. But I think when individuals make a decision, here's the part we don't know. Had he been thinking about this because their relationship was so tumultuous? Was this really just a knee-jerk reaction because of the dispute over the television? Or did he really come there with some, deeper, darker intent, which ultimately became a kidnap and a murder? And the suicide rates, as you know, Chris, we've seen an uptick. We've seen the upticks also, according to CDC, our Center for Disease Control, and WHO, and overall intimate partner homicide. And, I check the data every day as a criminologist, and what we know in 2024 is that of all of the homicides that took place, 20% of which involved intimate partner homicides. So it's really worthy of our attention and discussion.
So the question
Absolutely.
becomes, what did the department know, and when did they know it? A man does not go from bridge, saving hero, to kidnapping murderer in one afternoon. That journey takes time, and institutions are built to document time. So where are the documents?
Absolutely. And you look at this relationship, and tumultuous was the term that the sheriff used to describe it. In a lot of these cases, we'll hear it. It was a toxic relationship. And one thing that always stands out to me on these is, there are the good times, and then there's the bad times. And then eventually, it just gets to this point where, and you don't, I think it's hard to comprehend how it gets to the point of what we're hearing, where he would do this in front of 9 and 12-year-olds, and then here's their mom screaming for them to go call 911, and he's the guy who wears the uniform that's supposed to be the person protecting us against people that he ended up being. It's just so hard to fathom. But when you look at relationships and then you see crimes like this, as a criminologist, what are some of the consistencies you see in these stories of how a relationship goes and then gets to the point where there is this intimate partner violence?
Right. Well, again, we would understand, and certainly all of us in relationships recognize that it may just not be perfect, but there really is a distinct difference with imperfections that exist in relationships, and there tends to be the consistency and the continuity of which would include the arguments and, curse words, if you will, and slamming of things and breaking of things. And then, unfortunately, the progression, of course, is that the verbal becomes the physical, and then the apologies, and then back to gift giving and trying to right the wrong. So it really is this pendulum, Chris, that swings in both directions until a decision is made where literally, the enough is enough and it's got to stop. And sometimes that means getting authorities involved and actually documenting these circumstances with police. And now we hit the pause button and put the asterisk. But what happens when the police, right, is the aggressor or is involved in the violence? So it's really a delicate line, but certainly there's no blame
The
at all.
files that exist right now are scattered. The Pasco County Sheriff's Office press release, the initial incident report, the partially described 911 call, and the Facebook posts, those public posts that praised a man who would later take a mother from her children. They are still online. They are still searchable, and they are still, in their own way, evidence. So here is what I want you to do. Go to the Pasco County Sheriff's Office official Facebook page. Search the name, Savitz. You will find the posts. You will find the commendation. You will find the photograph of the first pitch. And I want you to ask yourself one question. What did the person posting those words actually know about the man in the photograph? And why did no one connect the dots before Mandy Facer got into that car?
With what he ended up doing. I'm also, something I think about with this relationship, because with the sheriff calling it a tumultuous one, it had this back and forth. We'll never know the full details of it, but we certainly know enough that it wasn't good. It appears that Mandy got out. Mandy did the thing that so many people who are victims of intimate partner violence, and not victim blaming, but they just stay in and hope things are for the better. It appears that she got out because he was coming back for his television. And yet, what really could have protected her from Deputy Savitz? And I'm not saying deputy because he ends up, that it was law enforcement that, prevented her from having protection. I'm just saying he was still out there. And in these cases, how often do you see it that it's not the person that's stuck in the relationship, it's actually the person that did the courageous thing to get out, and yet still they can't find that protection in the end.
Right. That's really a great point to raise. And we do know, Chris, that in these moments, it's almost like the pathway, the journey of the relationship, the starting point.
If this case disturbs you in a way that goes beyond the headlines, share this video. Subscribe to Trial Theory, Unsealed, and turn on notifications. Because the evidence is not finished. The personnel file is not sealed forever. And when it opens, we will be here to read it,